Whenever you receive the diagnosis for albinism, glaucoma, or any other condition that causes low vision, you tend to think of it in a vacuum, especially since it's first presented to you as a medical diagnosis. But in reality, our race, gender, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, where we live, all influence our experience with blindness. Unintentionally, for example, I think that the branding of my podcast and some of the ways that I approach topics such as independent living or traveling are greatly influenced by the fact that I identify as a woman and I choose to present very femininely. With my very special guest, Mia Parra, I wanted to take the opportunity in this episode to address directly the challenges that blind women face. Tune in to learn how both our gender and our blindness impact the way we do everything from putting on our eyeliner, finding a seat on the airplane, traveling alone in college, and meeting new people. Welcome back to another episode of Legally Blonde and Blind. I am very excited to have my new Legally Blonde and Blind guest, Mia Parra. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you with us today. Now, we are going to talk about many different things. We're going to be talking about Mia's eye condition, glaucoma. We're going to talk about gender, sexuality, and how that all intersects with blindness. So we have a lot to get to in today's episode. But first, I just want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, talk about some of your interests, hobbies, what you're studying, etc.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. So my name is Mia Parra. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm going into my sophomore year at Western Michigan University. I'm studying psychology. I've been legally blonde and blind my whole life. I said I'm studying psychology. I do theater. I've done theater throughout high school. Hopefully I'll be able to do it when I get to school in the fall.
Hopefully some in-person theater.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'm excited to actually be able to get to go to school.
You were in the same position as me with the virtual first year at college, so.
I know it was definitely stressful, having to navigate online school with a visual impairment. That was definitely a whole new thing. Yeah, I have a dog named Rosie. She's a black lab. I love her. She's the love of my life. I have a cat.
Is she a guide dog or just a pet?
She's just a pet.
Oh, okay.
Don't have a guide dog. I've thought about it. I don't think right now is the best time to get a guide dog, but it's definitely something I've thought about doing in the future.
I have 3 dogs. I have a lab, a 12-year-old lab named Carly, a pug named Freddie, and a lab mix, a puppy we just got. His name's Bear.
Oh, I know. I've seen pictures of him. It's so cute.
He's very chaotic. Fortunately, he doesn't bark a lot, though, so he's not going to interrupt the recordings.
Okay. Yeah, my door is shut, so hopefully my dog doesn't open the door.
Oh, yeah, it's all right. We've had in other podcast episodes I've done with friends, they've had dogs bark. We like the spontaneous appearances of other furry guests.
Yeah, we love that.
Anyways, could you get started by briefly explaining your eye condition?
Yeah, so I have glaucoma. I was born 2 months early, so my eyes didn't have enough time to develop properly. So I'm pretty much fully blind in my left eye. I use all of my vision out of my right eye. I have 20/300. So that's all of my usable vision. So with glaucoma, it is a series of eye conditions that affects the optic nerve. So people who have normal eyes, there's liquid in the front of their eye that's able to drain properly, but people who have glaucoma, the liquid doesn't drain the way it's supposed to. So it just gets built up, and over time, pressure is put up against the optic nerve, and then that causes blindness. So I don't know if you've ever been to the doctors and you've had your pressure checked.
Oh, yes, I have. It's the test where they move the thing really close to your eye, right?
Yeah, it's a little
horrifying.
I know. It's definitely my first couple times when I was little, it was terrifying, but now I do it once every couple months. So I'm used to having this thing up in my eye, just touching my eye.
I know.
So it's definitely scary to people who don't know what it is. I tell my friends, I'm oh yeah, I just had my eye poked,
just another Tuesday.
Right, just another day at the doctor's. So people who have your pressure should be around 12 to 14. And people who have glaucoma, their pressure is a lot higher. So I have to take medicine and different things to kind of help the pressure go down. So there's not a cure for glaucoma. So it's kind of just finding different tools in the toolbox to help the pressure go down,
That
basically.
makes sense. Does it cause you any pain?
It hasn't, I know it does to other people, but thankfully I haven't had any pain caused by it.
That's good at
Yeah,
least. Now,
yeah.
I know you said you experienced some more vision loss the past few years. Could you talk about like the experience of like losing vision?
Yeah. So before like April of 2020, I didn't really label myself as someone with a disability. I got through high school with just like getting by without people really knowing. Like people were kind of like, oh yeah, like she has a hard time seeing. Like I wasn't really outspoken about it. So around March, like early March of 2020, right before the pandemic happened, I went into my normal doctor's office for a checkup, and my pressure was at like 26. And that's a big red flag. It should be at like
Mm-hmm.
14. So having my pressure be at like 26, we were like, oh no, we either need to do a surgery or start like a new medicine. So we planned to have surgery in June of 2020. So I was put on like another medicine that was gonna like hold me over until then. And then the pandemic happened. So all of the like spots were open for the hospital. So we were like, oh, I can get my surgery sooner. So yeah, I had eye surgery in like the beginning of the pandemic. It was very weird, like being in the surgery room with like nobody else there. It was like,
Oh, I'm sure that must have been very hard.
yeah, it was weird. It was like the hospital was like dead. There was like nobody there.
This is in like March, and you said March, right?
It was in April.
Oh, okay. So still
Yeah,
right at the very beginning.
right, exactly. So yeah, I think like 3 days after my 18th birthday, I went in for my surgery to get a tube implanted into my eye to help the fluids drain more properly. And I had a lens replacement. And that was like the big thing that changed my vision because I was used to wearing glasses. I wore glasses my whole life. And then after the surgery, with the new lens, I don't have to wear glasses anymore. I think the best way to explain it is like I had like a contact lens put in my eye, basically. So now I can see things far away like a little better, but up close, it's really bad. Like my up close vision is like nothing. So I've had to, like
So it improved your distance vision, but it made like your vision up close worse.
yeah, exactly.
That's
Um,
interesting.
yeah, I know. It was really interesting, like living my whole 18 years of living with, the same vision and then having to relearn how to like live basically with a totally different like visual acuity. So yeah, I had to get like reading glasses, which I've never had reading glasses before. And I have a bunch of new like magnifying glasses things that I use when I'm like at work or if I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to like read something up close. I used to love to like read books, but now I have a hard time reading normal print. So I listen to audiobooks now. So that's
Oh, I
like
see.
yeah, that's an example of like things that I've had to like deal with the changes. And so yeah, I just the past year has been me like trying to find new things to
Yeah,
help
to adjust to that.
changes. Yeah, yeah.
Because with my condition, I have albinism, right? So I was
Mhm.
born with the exact same vision I have today. It's very strange for me to think about it changing, even if it's changing for the better, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I could never imagine getting any type of procedure. They don't really exist for people with my condition right now, but I could never imagine getting a procedure that would make my vision better. I feel like it would be just as hard adjusting to that as if it were to get worse, as weird
Yeah.
as that sounds.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely weird explaining to people who are like, why did you have the surgery if it made things a little bit worse for you? And my answer to that would be just like, well, it helped my glaucoma. Like, it wasn't
Yeah.
all about the vision. Like, it made my pressures go down. So now my glaucoma is stable, which is the good thing. But also on the flip side, like, the kind of more bad thing was that my vision got worse. So it's weird, like, knowing that I went through the surgery and, I like had that change happen to me. So
Yeah. Now, so you said your distance vision improved, right? Was
Mhm.
there anything after your surgery that you realized other people saw that freaked you out?
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like street signs was a big
Yeah.
thing. I still
People
like
actually
cannot
use
see
those.
street signs. Yeah, I still like can't see them, but I can see them like kind of now. Even like you know how like the walk sign is white and the
Yeah.
stop is red. Like now I know that it's like I used to just see like the white, but now I know it's actually like a person. Like the little picture is like a person
Wow, how
walking.
exciting.
I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was like supposed to be a person. I thought it was just like a white blob. I don't know. Right. So,
The one thing for me was always I never the idea that people could see inside car windows always freaked me out.
oh my gosh, I know that's crazy. Sometimes, actually, when I was little, I was like looking inside someone's car and I didn't realize there was somebody in the car. So,
Yeah, like especially far away, car windows to me look like shiny and black. So just the idea that like people can see what I'm doing in the car kind of freaks me out.
I know that is true.
Well, one of the major themes on Legally Blonde and Blind is accepting blindness, and I know you mentioned, at least in the beginning of your life, you didn't really see yourself as a part of the blind community or as a part of the disabled community. So, how did you come to accepting those identities and having a more positive view of blindness?
I think having like people through the internet has helped me a lot, even just like finding your podcast. And I remember I found your podcast back in like January or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Like we're the same age. Um, so
Yeah, I remember you first messaging me. I think it was after like the third episode or something.
yeah, yeah. So it's really helped me finding other people. My biggest inspiration is Molly Burke. I'm
Oh my
assuming
God,
that you know who
she's
she
an
is.
icon.
Yeah, she is an icon. I love her and I love watching her videos. I have TikTok, so I made some TikToks about my visual impairment and I've connected through other people. Like before like making my TikTok account, I had never met anyone who also had glaucoma, and I got connected with this girl named Kathleen. So me and Kathleen are pretty close now. She lives in San Francisco and she also has glaucoma and we're the same age, and so it was just so crazy like finding someone like across the country who has the same eye condition as you. Like
Uh-huh.
it was a really eye-opening experience, and I think finding other people has helped me accept my visual impairment.
Oh,
So,
100%. I was very lucky to have the experience of getting to go to conventions for people with my condition, but I know that's not the experience for everybody. I
mhm.
think what's interesting about TikTok, especially, is that there's like niche communities for everything on
I
TikTok.
know.
I remember I had downloaded TikTok during the pandemic. I had broken down. At first, I was opposed to it. I was like, no, I'm not going to waste my time. And then, quarantine happened.
Yeah.
But I remember on my For You page, I forget who, I don't remember who it was, but it was somebody who had albinism. And I was like, how did the algorithm know
I know, that's so
I
funny.
had this condition? I was very grateful to find those creators, but at the same time, it was a little terrifying that they figured it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I don't even think I looked up anything relating to albinism on TikTok, so it was just I don't know.
Yeah.
So the main topics I wanted to talk about on today's episode was firstly your experience with gender and blindness. And it was really interesting doing research for this episode beforehand because I had never really known that a larger percentage of women are blind than men. So I
Yeah.
was looking at a report on gender and blindness from the International Agency for Prevention of Blindness, and I found that they say that 55% of the world's blind are women, and that there are more than 20 million blind women in the world, which is pretty insane. And it's for a variety of reasons. It can, higher life expectancy of women, lack of access to preventative care, education, financial independence, etc. So blindness really does uniquely impact women. And I was
Yeah.
wondering, for you, how does gender influence the way that you experience blindness?
So, yeah, when I was like thinking about this podcast and thinking about things that I've experienced, you know, I feel like there's a certain way that blindness is supposed to look, or there's like a stereotype that people have for people who are blind. So, me being a very like femme presenting woman, I think it would be hard for someone who is more like masculine presenting. Let's say I like cut my hair really short and I got like a bunch of tattoos and I wore like darker colors. So I feel like there's definitely a difference in the way like the help you are receiving on the way that you present yourself.
When I've had people come up to help me, a lot of times, like, helping with the blindness intersects with being the chivalrous gentleman, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense. Like, the same kinds of people that run to hold open the door for you also will make sure you like find whatever room you're looking for. Like, I had that experience, especially when I was going to ship, which is, it's nice, right?
Hmm.
But I think that the way like men in particular help blind women is different than how they would help blind men.
Yeah, totally. Like even how like um if you need like a sighted guide, or is that what it's called? A sighted
Yeah.
guide? Yeah. So I flew to DC by myself when I went to DC a couple months ago, for my first time. And
What was that
uh,
like?
oh my gosh, it was so crazy. I was terrified. I was so scared to like fly by myself.
Oh,
But
I
I
am too. I haven't had the chance to yet. I
Mhm.
did take the metro by myself while I was at Chip though, which was a huge accomplishment for me, but I'm
Yeah.
still terrified of flying.
Yeah. Um, so I did request like disability services to have someone like escort me through the airport. So when I got there, I had a woman like she offered me like a wheelchair, and I was like, I don't really need a wheelchair. That's not my disability. But it made it easier for them to get me to the airport. So I was like, okay, I'll sit in a wheelchair. And then on the way, so I had a fine trip on the way there. On the way back, it was a man who helped me, and he like didn't offer me a wheelchair. He kind of just like walked in front of me to the gate,
Mm.
and then when I got to the gate, he like left me there. So I was like, that's not really what I needed. Like I needed someone to show me where my seat is on the airplane because I don't even know where the numbers are on the airplane seats. So I was like, that's not so he like just like left me. So I had to ask
He
I had to ask
abandoned
a
you.
flight attendant. Yeah, I had to ask a flight attendant to help me, and she was so nice. She like helped me get to my seat, and she showed me where like the buttons were.
I didn't even think about that, not being able to find the seat. I'm gonna fly Southwest now, just so I don't have to try and find my seat.
Yeah, like I don't even know where the numbers are, like where like
Yeah, where?
right,
Yeah, I don't
right.
know that either.
And probably aren't like that, but it was like I felt like the women were more helpful to me at the airport than the men. Like the guy wasn't very understanding of my
Yeah,
situation.
I guess I've had similar experiences where there's like the overly attentive and chivalrous, or the almost dismissive. I think there's two routes where that
Yeah,
can go. I also think, at least for me, when people have learned that I had a visual impairment, they almost reacted differently. Like, there wasn't, I guess, like, some people perceived it as I didn't need to be as independent. Like, I've had comments, I don't know if you've ever had these before, where people are like, "Oh, your husband can drive you around," or
oh yeah,
assuming that like if I were to date somebody, that they would almost be like my caretaker.
right.
And
Yeah,
I
I
I
definitely
feel like
thought
it's
about
like
that.
more natural, like, to presume it for a woman who's blind than a man who's blind.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that. Like, like if I get married and like I have kids, like how would it be if I were to get like divorced? Like let's
Yeah.
say, I didn't have that person to rely on. And I feel like that's not something like people would say to men. Like, men are just
Yeah,
to be like
exactly.
independent. Yeah.
It's hard for me to think about, like, you want to ask for help with people, like with your family and romantic partners and friends, but
Mhm.
then you don't want it to turn into a relationship where you're somehow dependent on them. And
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
travel, and it is a hard line to cross.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you too, but at least with appearances as well, I think it's interesting with blindness, because I've almost had people assume that I don't care about the way that I look, or that I wouldn't want to present in a very feminine way because of my blindness. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever had that before where like people are surprised, even like with Molly Burke, people are surprised that like she does her makeup and that she cares about fashion because people say things like,
Mhm.
well, if you can't really see, why does it matter to you?
Yeah, I know, totally. I definitely see that in like Molly Burke's comments, and I'm like, no, like she can do her makeup and she likes to wear what she's gonna wear. And I made a TikTok a couple of months ago explaining like how I do my eyeliner because I know that people who have visual impairments, I had to like find ways to like be able to do my makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I explained it is like I use my like camera on my phone, facing camera, and I like zoom in on it so I can like see my eye when I do
Oh,
my eyeliner.
interesting.
Yeah,
I
I've
might need to watch that TikTok because I still don't know how to do eyeliner.
yeah, I've tried using like the like magnified mirror and I don't really
Mm.
like it. I don't know, it just like doesn't really the mirror is kind of weird. Anyway, so I made this TikTok and some people in the comments were like, well, I'm not even blind and I can do my makeup or like I can't even do my makeup that good. So
Mm.
it's kind of like downplaying that like I was doing my makeup and they're like surprised by it.
People might believe that it's like femininely or doing your makeup is all about just like the visual appearance, but I think that also involves like ways to express yourself that are beyond like the visual. I think what's interesting with Molly Burke, for example, is she talks about how she enjoys like different like textures or feelings of fabrics, and they make her feel more confident. And it doesn't have to relate to like her like visual appearance necessarily.
Yeah, because like it makes her feel good and
Yeah.
do things that feel good for herself. So yeah.
No. How do you think your gender influences the way that you complete tasks and live independently as a blind woman?
The question. I feel like, I'm not a cane user and I used a cane when I was in the airport just so people would know that I was visually impaired. And the moment I brought out the cane, people like definitely made room for me. And I'm assuming that's like, men have the same thing,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
it was
People
really
just use the
interesting.
cane just so like they're ID'd as blind.
Exactly. Yeah, so I feel like people were more open to helping me, and I don't know if that would be different if I was a man.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I think for me though, like I think the combination of being blind and female makes me a little bit more nervous about traveling independently, and especially if I have something like a cane or something that IDs me as blind, it makes me very nervous. Like, is this going to make me appear more vulnerable? And
Yeah.
it's because we know that women, like disabled women, experience sexual assault at higher rates than able-bodied women, and that it makes me nervous, especially
Yeah.
if I'm out on my own and like by myself in the city, for example, or on public transit. Because what if I don't even what if I don't even see them until they're right next to me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely been something I've thought about a lot. Like next semester I have for some reason I scheduled a class that ends at like 6 p.m. And,
And it's
in
gonna
the
be dark
winter,
in winter.
yeah, in the winter it's gonna get dark. So I was like, I'm gonna have to, I'll bring my cane with me because if it's gonna be dark, I might not be able to see the steps. And that's like steps are like a big issue for me. So
Mm.
like what if I am just, if they're gonna if there's like a kidnapper or someone who sees this like tiny little girl with a cane, like
Yeah, no, I feel that way too because
yeah.
I am also very short.
Yeah, it's like an easy target kind of. So yeah.
When I was they did a so when I told you I went to some of these conventions for people with albinism, and they
Mhm.
did this self-defense session like tailored for visually impaired people, right?
Oh yeah.
And the people that I was with were all bigger than me. Like I was the tiniest one there. So I didn't really learn any self-defense skills because what ended up happening is like they would grab me and they'd be like, Marissa, you're going in the van. And I was too puny to like, fend them off.
Yeah.
So I feel that the other challenge too is that I don't I'm afraid of these things, but I don't want it to stop me from traveling on my own or doing what sighted people do on a daily basis, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
Because I feel like sometimes I encounter people, they have the best intentions, but it's almost like they expect me to be less independent because there are bad people out there. It's almost as if I should have to change my behavior to prevent my own assault, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
It's very frustrating. You
Yeah.
even see this with able-bodied women. You'll see all of these Facebook posts about how to defend yourself, or ads for pepper spray or stun guns, or like those little keychains that can break the car windows.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
there's so much talk about what women can do, but there's not nearly as much conversation going on about, like, how do we prevent these assaults from occurring in the first place? What makes men think that they can do this to people, especially disabled women?
Yeah.
No.
I think, being in college, I don't know if your campus has, I think my campus has these little like blue things where you
Oh
could
yeah,
push
the
it.
blue lights.
Yeah.
My
So
one
that's,
concern with
yeah.
them is I don't really know. So if it's night out, right, and I'm trying to find one, so I'll be
Hmm.
able to find the light, but I don't know like what to press on it.
It's true.
Like, do
Yeah.
they have? I wonder if they have like braille on them. Because do you imagine?
Yeah, that is a good question. I've never like even like actually been up to one of
I'll
them.
have to
So
investigate them when I go back on campus.
yeah, we'll have
Because
to check it out.
I don't know if like some kidnapper is going to be like, okay, let me just wait for you to call the like to figure out how to use the blue light system. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't think they're just going to stand to the side and
right.
wait for me
Like, wait, hold on.
to do that,
Yeah,
or get like the pepper spray out of my bag. Like, just give me 1 second, and then you can continue attacking me.
yeah.
That's what I haven't carried pepper spray yet because I'm like, well, what if I spray it in my own eyes?
I know. I told my mom that I wanted to get pepper spray, and she was like, "You're gonna spray it in your eyes," and I was like,
That is exactly what my family said.
"Yeah,
I mean, they're not wrong.
right, totally, yeah."
I feel like even if I wasn't legally blind, I'm still just very clumsy, and I would do that anyway. But
Same.
the blindness definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. So I segue a bit into talking about LGBTQ plus representation in the disabled community. So, as a disabled woman, one thing that I noticed is that people don't perceive me and other disabled people as like sexual or interested in a relationship. And I was wondering how that works for you as a member of the LGBT community, like how that intersection works out for you.
I came out as bi when I was, I think, 16. So I think in just the area that I lived in, my parents were very supportive. I'm so thankful to have supportive people in my life. But at the same time, it was kind of like, oh, you're like kind of young to be coming out. And on top of that, you have a disability. So it's kind of like, people thinking that you're not old enough to know on top of like being disabled. So it was like a matter of like people taking me seriously.
I think sometimes a disability, like people can perceive you as more childish or innocent, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, there's
totally.
a lot of infantilization that goes on in media. Like, if, like, for example, if you see, you ever seen like these usually come around in the spring when they have like, oh, this like person asked a disabled person to prom or homecoming or something like that,
Oh, yeah,
where it's
it's
like
like,
perceived as this like good deed that this able-bodied person is doing, rather than like the idea that they could be like platonically or even romantically interested in one another is just like out of the question. It's just something that they're doing for like community service.
yeah, totally. It's like they just want like a pat on the back to be like, "Oh, I did something good today." Like,
Challenges in like dating in LGBTQ spaces and like disclosing your disability.
in the area that I live in, there's public transportation is not very accessible. Like we do have buses, but it's like if I wanted to get somewhere that's like 10 minutes away, it would take me like 40 minutes. So it's, if I were ever to be going on a date with a girl, it would be like, so how am I gonna get there? It would be like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's weird having like your date come pick you up on the first day. Like, I had a girl like come pick me up from my house, and then she met my dad, and I was like, that's kind of awkward having to like meet your dad
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
first
because
date.
usually like, and I guess it's kind of hard too because like if they're picking you up, like you're going to be alone in the car with them. It's not like
Yeah,
you can take if you're in an area with public transit, you can meet in a coffee shop or a restaurant or a neutral space with a lot of other people. But if you're in a more suburban area, you kind of have to rely on them to get to the date, unless you
yeah.
want like your mom to drop you off like in middle school and you go to the movie theater.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it was always just like a matter of like, oh, I'm gonna go to your house. Like, can you drive me home? And it would be like we'd have to like talk about how I was gonna get there. And like
Yeah.
it was a matter of trying to find how I was going to get somewhere. And that was a big thing for me. And I'm excited to like be going to college where hopefully, I mean, I've heard good things about Western's public transportation. So hopefully that's not as big of an issue for me. Yeah.
I was doing research for this episode. I was also looking into like some statistics about like the accessibility of like LGBTQ community centers. And it was really interesting because I found, for example, that only 18% of these community centers have like braille signs and materials, and only 70% of them have accessible parking and are wheelchair accessible, which is
Mm-hmm.
something interesting to think about because like these services are there for like people who are queer, but then it's not really considering like what other challenges they might be facing. So it's almost like, I guess sometimes like these, I mean, if someone gives you a pamphlet and you can't read it, it can't really help you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I feel like there needs to be more intersectionality of like the LGBTQ community and the disabled community. Like I feel like they're kind of two separate things that needs to be
Yeah, and I think this
included.
goes back to the idea that people like don't view like those who are disabled as, you know, having like being sexual and wanting to have like relationships with other people.
Uh-huh. Last year I read something about how like there was a pride parade that wasn't wheelchair accessible, and that's just like so upsetting. Like for like the LGBTQ plus community that is like everybody is welcome, but yet it's not always accessible for disabled.
Mm-hmm. Or
Yeah.
even just like I even like navigating the crowds or something like at a pride parade, I would find very intimidating.
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but I never did well with crowds. Like large public events freak me out.
Yeah, I haven't in the pandemic, I feel like I haven't been to large crowds in a while, but it is something that like, I have to make sure that I'm like next to somebody that I know. Or
Mm-hmm.
even I'll like ask my friends, I'll be like, can you like make sure I'm still next to you? Because I'm
Yeah.
worried of like getting
Don't lose
lost.
me, please.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
went to I went to go see the fireworks. I was in DC for the 4th of July, and I went to go see the fireworks. And my friends and I basically like formed this chain. Like we all held each other's hands, and we walked like single file, like a little conga line.
I love that.
Which I mean, anyone can get lost in these situations, but it's something that we have to think about a lot more than my sighted friends because they can't just
Yeah.
look across the room and be like, "Oh, like we can't just find them right away." Though I will say, I don't know, your hair is not as white as mine, but I
Yeah.
feel like it helps because people say, "Oh, I always look for the hair when I'm trying to find you," and I'm like, "Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy to find."
Yeah, that is true. I have more like dirty blonde hair, so
Yeah,
definitely not as blonde as yours.
yeah, no, I guess mine's more like a platinum blonde, I guess, but it's a good marker, so I will not get lost for very long.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I when I'm looking for people, I like look for like distinctive things. Like my mom has curly hair and in the winter
Mm-hmm.
wears like a bright red coat. So that's how I like find her if I'm on
Oh
like the winter.
yeah, yeah. A lot of times, like clothes or like colored clothing.
Mhm.
So, before we head out, is there anything else you would like to add about your experiences with gender blindness? Anything of the sorts?
Oh yeah, I definitely had it's also kind of like a question for you. I've never used like dating apps, but let's say someone were to like would you disclose your disability to someone? You'd know how like on dating apps you have like a bio. Would you be
Uh
like
huh.
would you be like, "Oh, I'm visually impaired?" And that's always something I've thought about like do I tell someone before the date or I don't know, it's up to anyone to decide what they're going to do, but I'm
Yeah,
yeah.
that's really interesting. So my current partner is also visually impaired. Like we have
Mhm.
the same exact condition. So I've never really been in that position where in romantic relationships I've had to disclose it. I have had to more recently, like when I was at my summer program, because no one knew who I was, I had to basically say it just to avoid any kind of awkwardness. So if I were to use a dating app, I don't know if I would put it in the bio necessarily, but I feel like my disability has like become much more of a part of my life since I've started the podcast. It's something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So I'd probably even bring it up that way, not just as like, oh, I can't drive, but this is something that I'm really passionate about and that I enjoy speaking about. I feel like
Yeah.
that answer really shifted for me. I think if you had asked me the same question a few years ago, I'd have been like, oh no, like not talking about it at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I'm someone who I will disclose it like right away. Like, it, won't be the first thing that I say, but I'm always like, oh, by the way, like, I am visually impaired, and I, if I'm meeting someone somewhere, I like make sure that I know where they're sitting. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, things like that, like, I feel I'd rather disclose my disability, because then if I don't, it's like, kind of awkward. Like, why can't you find where the table is?
Yeah,
Like,
it's funny because I guess, especially since we're not full-time cane or guide dog users, we can pass really easily as sighted.
yeah,
And then weird little things like that'll happen, and they'll be like, "What's going on?"
right. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, no. So generally, like with your sighted partners, how has disclosing that been for you? Have they
Um,
reacted positively? Has it changed like your relationship with them at all?
no, I don't. I think I've definitely had pretty positive experiences. Again, I don't know if I would have these positive experiences if it was with a man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes men aren't as welcoming to it.
Yeah, we're a little more
Especially
closed
being,
off about it.
yeah, especially being like queer. It's like, you're already not heterosexual, so into like different types of people. So
Mm.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
that makes
so,
sense.
yeah, I've
I've
definitely
even
had
noticed
that
like when I've
experience.
introduced myself in like the context of like club meetings or something. I mean both genders have done this, but I'll tell them about it. Like, hey, just so you know, like if we're working together tutoring a student, for example, like I might not be able to see everything on the screen. And then they're usually very short about it. They're like, "Oh, thank you for sharing," and then they just like move on to the next subject as quickly as possible. Like,
Yeah,
no, like we can talk about this. It's not like it's not. It doesn't have to be the elephant in the room.
yeah, totally.
And also, I feel like I have a lot of. I feel like I don't know about you. I feel like I have a lot of. I feel like I have a lot of blind moments, where just crazy things have happened to me. Various falling into doors, poles,
I know.
sidewalks, etc. Like I've got a lot of good awkward moments I could share.
Oh yeah, totally. I've like fallen downstairs and stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, definitely relate to that.
At our school, we have these horrifying red brick stairs that, of course, they don't have any markings on them because
Oh
that
my
would just
gosh, I
make them.
hate that. I hate
That would
that.
just make them ugly, right?
Right.
According to
Yeah.
my school's logic. So, I was wearing. I posted about it on my Instagram story. I was wearing wedges, like 3-inch wedges, because why not? And I was trying to go down these steps, and I had like. I didn't completely wipe out, but I was pretty close.
Oh yeah, I know. I totally
So
know
it
what
was
you mean.
not a good moment. And there was like 3 other people there, and they were just looking at me.
I know that's so uncomfortable,
I
especially like
know. It's worse when they just stare at you. Like at least ask if I'm okay.
right. Yeah, I don't know if this is the same thing for you, but I feel like it takes me longer to walk downstairs than
Oh
other
yeah.
people. So like if my friends are like ahead of me, they have to like wait for me to, because I have to like feel where the step is. So I'm
Hmm.
like, sorry, like I'm taking so long to walk down the stairs, but yeah.
I feel like once you have the first step down, like you have an idea of how long each step is, it's a lot easier. Did
Yeah,
you go up the Lincoln Memorial steps by any
I
chance?
did. I did. It's not too bad going up steps for
Oh,
me.
it's going down. Yeah.
Going down, because like the Lincoln Memorial steps are like there's like the steps, and then there's like the landing, then there's more
Uh-huh.
steps. So I
And
was
they're
like,
all
oh my
white.
God. I know. I was like, can we put some like tactile, like some yellow strips on these steps?
I think Abe would have wanted some tactile strips there.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah, I had to have my friend hold my hand when I was walking down because I was like, oh boy. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if you have poor depth perception as well, because you said you don't really have vision in one eye, right?
Yeah, I have like horrible depth perception. Actually, when I was in DC, we went to Jenny's ice cream, and
Oh, I haven't been there yet. I need to go.
it's so good. The lady like handed me my ice cream cone, and I don't know why, but I like reached, but I didn't reach like to the right direction because like my depth perception is horrible.
Oh,
So I like reached a totally different like way. She was like, "Oh, like you gotta move your hand." I was like, "Oh yeah." She probably was like, "What?" She probably was so confused.
I feel like I always run into that if I'm at a restaurant and the waiter's trying to hand you like a water or something, or like you're like, oh
Yeah,
boy, I don't want to like drop my food on everybody else.
I know. Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. I think this podcast, like one of the reasons I started this was so I can meet other people like you. And I think it's really special that like, if I hadn't ever started the podcast, we probably would have never like interacted with each other on the internet. Because
Yeah.
before the podcast, I never talked about my disability on social media. And now that I have started doing that, I've met so many people and it's really cool. So thank you so much for being willing to share your story and come onto this podcast. I know it can be pretty nerve-wracking talking into a camera, especially like I find it awkward too. Like if you're not speaking right in front of people, I always find that awkward.
hmm
So I really appreciate you for being vulnerable and putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, that was Mia Parra. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I had a great time recording it. I did not nearly have as much fun editing it so I recorded the episode at the beginning of August when I was still at home. But I moved back to school 2 weeks ago. And while I was in the library editing this episode, I do it on Anchor. It's the website that I distribute the podcast through. So it's all online, right? So my iPad disconnects from the Wi-Fi at the school, and I lost like 20 minutes of progress on this episode. This happened to me twice. It wasn't just a one-time thing. So I have probably listened to this episode more than I have listened to any other Legally Blonde and Blind episode just because I had to go back so many times. Thankfully, it was a good one. Otherwise, I would have been very annoyed. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow Legally Blonde and Blind on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow my social media pages on Facebook, my Instagram at legallybb_. My Twitter account has the same username. Not gonna lie, I just can't get into Twitter. So Instagram and Facebook are the most reliable sources for updates on Legally Blonde and Blind. I think the Twitter account only has 2 followers, so if you want to be the third, go for it, but I don't post many updates on there. All in all, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.